This clip is brought to you by Piedmontese Beef, the best beef on the planet. Use code POWER for 25% off your entire order. Enjoy the clip and enjoy your meat. There's so much on this protein quality subject that I hope we get to. But on our interview with Dr. Lyon, she mentioned that as far as eating meat, that there haven't been any RCTs or randomly controlled trials on populations that eat high amounts of meat or red meat. And that was partially why she was saying, like, there's really no proof to show that it's unhealthy. Now, when we put that out on social media, it was actually quite fun to go in the comments, but she was very careful with her words when she mentioned randomly controlled trials versus the typical nutrition studies. And I know that you're a guy who delves into a lot of nutrition studies, but what are people missing when they look at these nutrition studies that show that red meat is unhealthy or meat is unhealthy? What are they missing? Because there are a lot of studies that go over this, but some of them tend to be just kind of trash.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the nutrition is the world of nutrition science is can be a bit of a house of cards built on really crappy data. And most of the data is epidemiologic in nature, meaning it's like looking at populations and, you know, cross-sectional data with various cohorts, looking to see like, okay, what are these people eating? How are they aging? They're not randomized controlled trials, which, by the way, are the kinds of trials required to prove cause and effect. But
a lot of these epidemiological studies, I'm sorry to interrupt, but they're in major nutrition journals, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but because you can't take a human being and put them on a 80-year-long randomized controlled trial to see and to you know, assess how different dietary patterns lead over the long term in that kind of rigorously controlled setting will lead or contribute to different health outcomes. So you have to, I mean, you have to look at populations, see how they're eating, and do your best to control for the confounding variables that may be playing a role. For example, like healthy user bias, which is always an issue, always.
Yeah.
Like researchers now, especially with the higher quality data, they do their best to control for things like, you know, when looking at for example, per capita meat consumption, like the GDP, for example, or, you know, various other factors. But you just can't escape the fact that like healthy user bias is a real thing, right? Like, and a good example that I like to offer is like, if you were to think about quinoa and you were to look at like all of the people in the United States who eat quinoa on a regular basis, chances are their health is going to be way better than the people who don't regularly eat quinoa, right? And is that because of the quinoa or is it in spite of the quinoa? Maybe the quinoa is having no effect whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
Chances are if you know how to pronounce quinoa, you're health conscious. You're reading health blogs. You like shop at a Whole Foods.
My mom fed me so much quinoa as a kid.
Did she?
Damn. Yeah, dude. My mom was super health conscious. She is super health conscious. So like she was listening to Oprah and Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz, and that's the stuff that they would spout. So,
100%. 100%. But I mean, I don't think that study's been done, but I guarantee you, if you were to look at the US and like stratify by like least, you know, people who consume the least amount of quinoa to people who consume the most quinoa, you're going to see a huge health difference. And so the media might take a headline like that and say quinoa associated with 300% reduced risk of XYZ.
And you can do the same thing with an activity.
You can do the same
like,
thing.
look at how healthy surfers are.
Yeah.
It's like, well, of course, like surfing's fucking impossible.
There you go.
It's really hard, you know?
There you go. So like, yeah, so healthy user bias, like with things that like the population generally considers to be healthy and is like maybe not as easily accessible to people who live in food deserts, that you're going to see like the most healthy user bias there. And then it works the opposite way for meat, because people who tend to consume more meat and like especially processed meat, right? Like processed meat tends to be fast food. It tends to be chicken nuggets, things like that, right? Like you know, they'll use pepperoni pizza as like a surrogate for processed meat.
Not usually a charcuterie board.
Right. And so
just throw that in there.
Yeah, so it's like and so you'll regularly see that meat is associated with like worse health outcomes and things like that, but it's for the same reason, just like it's the other side of the coin.
And it's also like those populations that, like, you know, let's say the meat that you mentioned, they're also potentially eating in a caloric surplus. They're more likely to be sedentary. That's kind of how that bias is structured into that.
More likely not to give a fuck. Eating the fries and the shake with the burger and the bun.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, new research is really coming out, I think, destroying the myth that red meat is unhealthy. Like there was just this paper published in Nature Medicine that came out like 2 or 3 weeks ago that looked at red meat consumption, looked at all available observational data with regard to red meat consumption and 6 health outcomes, including colorectal cancer, 2 types of stroke, so hemorrhagic and ischemic stroke, so the 2 major types of stroke, and there were like a few type 2 diabetes, and they found that there was like super weak evidence for for basically all of the health outcomes except for stroke, and no evidence that red meat has any association with stroke.
Yeah.
And even when you see these weak, it's just like, because there's like this endless confounding that occurs when looking at observational level data, it's just like you'd have to be a fool to ascribe causality to some of these weak associations that we see. So to me, it's just like, don't base your diet around that kind of data. Base your diet around like common sense and what we know is going to get your body in the best shape that it can be in, and eat the foods that are going to assuage your hunger in the best way that we know that they can.
I like that word.
Yeah.
Assuage.
We both were like, whoa.
That's an SAT word right there.
Yeah.
Some fanciness.
Hey guys, if you like this clip, go ahead and comment down below and let us know what you liked about it. All right. Share this with a friend. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. And also, we are on Reddit and Discord. All that's down below. All our sponsors and everyone that supports us down below there too, so you can get whatever you like from us. All right. Peace.